This is a demo addressing a question that came up about how to model architecturally accurate models using measurements. And there are a couple of tools and a couple of techniques to go about building polygonal models and even NURB models using some more accurate techniques and using some measuring tools. And I'm just going to go over a few of them here. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to be aware of your measuring units, and that is the scale that you're working in Maya. And what you would do is you would go to where is a window is setting preferences and open up your preferences. And your preferences can also be accessed down here in the lower right hand corner. There's a little icon that'll bring up your preferences as well. In the preferences, you want to open up down in the middle on the left here in the middle the settings, and this will give you a section called working units. Right now Maya defaults to centimeters, and what that basically is that on the grid, if you're showing the grid here, and even if you're showing the orthographic views here, each one of these squares is 1 centimeter. And so if you were to build something, you are building in the centimeter scale, and you can change this, and you can do, you can use meter, you can go to inches and foots. So for just the sake of, because we're building a room, let's just put it at foot. And if you notice right off here, it's going to get larger. Our scale has gotten quite big, and so we're going to have to navigate down. So I'm holding down the Alt key, and I am left and middle mouse dragging down to zoom out, and it's also going to do the same thing as well in our other orthographic views. You're going to have to zoom out to fit into the screen here. Okay, so now that we've figured out our scale, and we're going to be working in feet, so each one of these squares here on the grid is a foot, let's start to build a room according to this measuring unit. Now, what we've been doing previously is we've been using just polyprimitive cubes, and we go into create polyprimitive, and we go to just opening up a cube here. By default, Maya will have interactive creation checked here, and usually I don't like using that, so I just uncheck that. And what that does is that when I now go create polyprimitive cube, it's just going to make a cube come up right here, and I'm going to press 5 to get shaded mode, and it just places a cube right in the and it'll be a 1 foot by 1 foot, so it's going to come in to 1 unit measure here. And then what we can do here is you can scale it up. If you grab the middle scale to, I just pressed R, and I can scale this up to whatever size and then move it up off the grid, and so on and so forth. I'm going to delete that. For what we're doing here, if you want to create something to a specific size, I'm going to go to create up and go to polygon primitives, and I am going to check that interactive creation back on. And so what that's going to do is, if you've used interactive creation before, once I have that active and I want to make a cube, I'm going to create polygon primitive cube, and I start by dragging on the grid, and I'm going to drag the base, and you can see that I can drag it in different proportions here, and I'm going to let go, and then it's going to ask drag up to set the height. So I'm going to left mouse drag up again, and I'm going to set the height. As you can see, it's kind of arbitrary, the size that I'm creating here, and I'm not creating a specifically perfect cube. It is off measure. It is definitely an arbitrary measurement on each side. And if you're doing something just by eyeballing it, that's going to be just fine. But if you want to create a cube, a room, or an object, or some kind of environment that's a specific size, you're going to want to be a little bit more precise with it. Up here, I'm gonna open up the polygon tab in my shelf here, and this is just a little shortcut. So I'm going to do the same thing. Instead of going to create polyprimitive cube, I'm just going to press on this polycube primitive here, and that will basically do the same thing as I did before. I can drag a cube up like that. Now, to make a more accurate cube, as I was showing, what you're going to want to do is, I have the interactive creation checked. It's going to be on default now. I'm going to select that tool, and I'm going to press Shift as I drag. Notice what happens now when when I press Shift down and drag, it's going to create a cube. I'm dragging on the ground plane, but it's also building the height and the width in the same proportion, and I'm building a perfect cube just by dragging it like that. Now look if you were to look down here, I'm going to go down, and you can see that it's not a very perfectly made cube. If you were to build it to the grid here, which I'm going to show you how to do in just a short while, you can see that it's off, and I'm not building anything. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is going to be an 8 foot by 8 foot cube, or thereabouts. It's not exact. So what I want to do is I want to build a perfect cube, 10 foot by 10 foot by 10 foot. I'm going to delete this cube, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm using the grid as a guide. So I know that each one of these grid squares are 1 foot, and I can use those grid squares to build a cube to whatever dimensions that I want. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to get into position here a little bit. I'm going to press the cube primitive. I'm going to press Shift and X at the same time. I'm going to start at the center, and what that X does is it snaps it snaps the starting point to the center, and each time I drag it out, it's going to drag out and snap to the grid exactly to those grid square points. So I have just dragged this out, 5 on each point. So this is a 10 foot by 10 foot cube. I let go, and I have a 10 foot by 10 foot cube here.